Pod. Welcome back to another episode of Say Who Say Pod. He's Danny O'Neill in a sports coat. I'm Christian Caple, and DeMond Williams Jr. is still Washington's quarterback as of this very moment.
Undisputed.
We're not gonna jabber a whole lot to introduce this episode. We have a very special guest this week, as you probably saw in the show title. We won't make you wait too much longer for it, so I will simply tell you that today's episode of Say Who Say Pod is brought to you by our good friends at Chuck Olson Kia in Shoreline, locally owned and operated since 1964, family owned and operated by a family of University of Washington graduates with a friendly, low-pressure sales staff and a competitively priced selection of vehicles. We hope you will make Chuck Olson Kia your next vehicle buying destination. If you do, ask for our friend Henry Olson, and if you talk to Henry, we sure hope you'll tell him Say Who Say Pod sent you. And then you can text your friends, tell them about Chuck Olson Kia, and maybe use the Husky Mobile phone service on T-Mobile's nationwide 5G network. This show is also sponsored by our friends at Husky Mobile, partnered directly with the University of Washington to offer affordable phone plans for the Husky community, with up to 7% of each bill going back to UW Athletics. Subscribers can also enjoy game day perks like fast pass lanes, seat upgrades, and giveaways, all while on T-Mobile's nationwide 5G network. Make the switch today at gohuskymobile.com. Use the code ONMontlake at checkout. That's code ONMontlake at checkout to get your first month free when transferring your number. Thanks again to Husky Mobile for supporting today's show. Danny, should we get to it?
I would love to get to it. And remember, when you enter the code at Husky Mobile, it's on Montlake, Montlake.
There you go. No U in there, not Montlake Terrace.
No, it's Montlake, on Montlake. Yeah, I'm excited. And just so everybody's aware, I'm going to call him Coach Pete, because I generally, like when I was covering Pete Carroll, I'd always refer to him as Pete Carroll. But as in my role as Husky fan and not at all objective journalist, I'm going to call him Coach Pete.
Let's talk to him. Well, as I mentioned, we are pleased to be joined today by former Washington Huskies coach Chris Petersen. If you take a look at the screen, for those watching on YouTube, probably doesn't need the introduction, but those listening on Apple Podcasts, there you go. Our big special guest this week. I want to start by asking, first of all, thanks for joining us, Chris. What was harder for you this year, the Boise State game or the UC Davis game in week 2?
Oh, geez. That's a great question. That is a really good question. Yeah. Just the fact that I don't know the answer to that. That's a great question, because, the fact that UC Davis you knew was going to be really outmanned. But when the game gets that's why I don't like those matchups. When they get away from you, the score gets away that much. That's not good for anybody. That's not fun for anybody. I guess it's fun for some fans, but even the coaches, you're like, okay, what did we really learn there? And, and then to UC Davis's credit, that's a hard thing to rebound from. To get, I always say this, the number one thing that a coach is responsible for is developing confidence in their guys. Confidence is cash. When those kids play confident, everything changes. You can take chances, you can take risks, you can rebound from things faster. And so when you get beat like that, that's a hard thing. And UC Davis did. Tim Plow's a great coach down there, so he did a great job. But I also thought, fast forward to the Boise State game, I knew how beat up Boise State was. And I think a couple kids had opted out, one of their better safeties and all that. And so I knew that was going to be a tough matchup too. I just love to watch really good football and good matchups. And I thought that matchup was a little bit skewed behind the scenes, because I knew what was going on a little bit more over at Boise. And Jed did a great job. All those kids played. It was an early bowl game, no opt-outs, all that. So I'm like, yeah, this might be a tough one.
I know we're going to get into some looking at where UW is right now, but as you talked about that, I thought of your approach when you were at Boise, which was you took a lot of really difficult games and kind of anyone, anywhere. And with the way the playoffs are set up now, I have wondered whether we're going to see fewer of those sort of interconference matchups between really good teams. What's your perspective on just general scheduling and the kind of matchups we're seeing?
First of all, I think that is probably the least talked about, most important factor in a team's success during the year. Like, people will mention strength of schedule and kind of blow by it. I think it is hugely critical in terms of a factor of winning and losing. I always kind of like look at that now, doing some stuff with Fox. Like, I think it was maybe even Oklahoma, Alabama as well. Both those, I'm like, whoo, these guys got a tough schedule. And then I looked at, I think it was maybe A&M's schedule. And I'm like, these guys got a really good schedule. And there was another SEC team that I'm like, this is really good. And so I think that really matters, how that thing is configured. And a lot of times it's out of your control. But even how games fall on your schedule in your league, a travel schedule now, I think it really, really matters. So I think that is a really good question, because I don't think it's talked about nearly enough. It's not, even in the NFL they talk about, but there's so much parity in the NFL. And in college football, there's so much discrepancy. Like I said, I don't like the games between UC Davis and University of Washington, but I'm also like, UC Davis needs that game to pay bills.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, do we want to say, no, we're not doing that thing? Well, then what's Davis and those type of, like, that fund their program half the year off that game alone? So again, like so many things in college football, we think these answers are real simple on the surface. Like, why would you do that? Like, I have things that's like, why are we doing that? And then when I talk to some people, it's like, yeah, okay. Yeah, it's never quite that simple.
I know when we talked a couple of years ago, obviously you'd been doing the Fox thing, but you said, hey, yeah, and I work with coaches at the University of Washington. I also work with, some coaches around the country on some stuff. And it's been kind of fun seeing that sort of trickle out in the media over the last couple of years. Like, oh, okay, he works with Sean McVay. Oh, okay, he's working with Spencer Danielson.
Yeah.
Are you finding ways to kind of scratch that itch of still, obviously you're watching a ton of football, you're analyzing it, live in studio on Saturdays during the season, but of also working with coaches and maybe working on more sort of like culture and organizational things and those sort of things?
Yeah. Yes. So, you guys know the name Morgan Housel, who's a best-selling author. He wrote The Psychology of Money and a bunch of other books. I know that because I like to give that, a lot of times our seniors, when they kind of figure out, like, I was always big on this reading thing with our guys, like, that can change your life. And no college student likes to read, but once you get out, you can, develop that habit. And so I'm always pushing on that. And so they'd come to me and say, hey, you got a book, and Psychology of Money was one of the books I gave our guys at the end of my run there that had come out. And so I've always been a Morgan Housel fan, and how he just thinks about, it's really about thinking about life. And so about a year or two ago, somebody sent me something that he wrote, an essay, a blog or whatever. And the title of the article was just this: Formula for a Good Life. Purpose plus independence. And that right there just stopped me in my tracks. And I think I read the article, but I didn't need to, because I thought, this guy is so on it. When I think about my time coaching, I think about this, that I had really good purpose, and it wasn't winning football games. That was the necessary evil to check the box to stay there and do some of the things that we were trying to do with the kids in terms of repurposing the sport experience to teach life lessons and all that cliche stuff. But we were really into it. And so I had good purpose there. I really did. What I had zero of was independence. Zero. Partly it was my shortcoming of not developing the skill of being present where my feet were. So even when I came home, I was never home. I was still back in the office. If we did go on vacation for a short time in the summer, I wasn't on vacation. My mind was still back in the office or on the phone solving these other problems. And so zero presence in that job, or excuse me, zero independence in that job. Fast forward to my new life, I got more independence than I know what to do with. I control my schedule. So I have to work hard on finding purpose. And so I love going down to Fox and watching college football. That's an enjoyable day for me. I don't see it as huge purpose in my life. I just like watching college football and, feeling the pain and the thrill of victory and those type of things from coaches that I know. But so I have to find other things, and working with coaches, which I did not think was going to be that, does give me purpose because I feel the pain, the struggle, the the hardness of the job and the arena they're in. And if I can kind of help them think about things and walk that journey a little bit, I always feel like that was time well spent.
That's a super interesting perspective because I don't think people as journalists who cover it or fans that watch it, we do think about, we recognize how all consuming the job of being a football coach in the college or in the NFL is, but that you still can have a secondary impact kind of through coaches and impacting how other coaches see their teams without being as consumed by the job of coaching. That's really fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the coaching, people don't understand. And I hate this thing like, well, those guys make so much money. Like, it's always like, oh, they make that is, it's like, I just don't think about it like that at all.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we have one life to live. And it is a really hard, tough, and in the arena that they're in now with no rules, no common sense, no nothing. In a lot of ways, it's a miserable job. I mean, it really is. And so I just have a lot of compassion for that. And they're really trying to do good work, good work for the university, be right by the kids, to do, to take this super transactional environment that's now being created and still be like a transformational leader.
Mm-hmm.
Which is so hard to do because everything coming at them, like nobody cares about any of that. It is just like, what's in it for me and money for everybody. And, I remember even back in my days at Boise, I mean, we'd have some of these conversations and I used to just say, like, even with the coaches' salaries, escalating, I'm like, money ruins everything. Like, you can just feel this, that money just changes and ruins so much of this stuff. And now, oh my stars. I mean, and I'm not, everybody's past the thing that kids shouldn't be paid in this thing. Everybody's on board with that. That's in the business. But there needs to be like some guardrails and some rules and some regulation that save people and the industry from itself.
Yeah. One of the things I was going to ask you is your perspective. We're obviously in a really chaotic time. And I wonder, is this a transition period that's very chaotic, or is this going to be the new normal? What's your perspective?
I'm very hopeful. I don't know the timeline, but let's just say, I don't know, 3 to maybe 5 years, that there is going to be more changes, more the realignment again. I don't know exactly what that's going to look like, but it needs to happen. And we just need, like, I don't know if there's a super conference and then, there's 4 different levels and everybody does what's appropriate for their situation in their university. But I just know there needs to be more structure and, regulations. And I always think about this. It's like saving, like I used the word earlier. It's like, it's like we're saving coaches from themselves, saving the industry from itself. Like I used to think about this in recruiting. And there was always a lot of big talk from the NCAA on like adjusting the calendar this was a handful of years before I stepped away, but it was like, we need to adjust this for the quality of life for the assistant coaches. And I'm like, amen. Yes. So they adjusted and it made it worse. They adjusted again and made it worse. And I'm like, do they talk to anybody about this stuff? And so now there's no talk of that. But coaches are so competitive, and it's like a dog that's just going to overeat and like kill themselves. Some of these coaches are like, you got to help and put restrictions on these guys. Or it's 24/7, 365. It's not healthy. It's not good for them, the industry, the kids, anybody involved, in my opinion.
What do you think are the most obvious fixes or the easiest fixes, calendar wise?
Yeah.
Work, schedule wise, hours wise, whatever it might be.
Yeah. I don't know if there's any easy fixes in this whole thing. I really don't. Like I was saying, like you start kind of pulling the layers back and it's like, oh, well, that's why they're not doing that. So I'm not so naive to act like I got all these answers. I got like no answers. But I do think some things that need to really be investigated, and it's stuff that's already being talked about. I think the number one thing is the calendar needs to be adjusted. I think football needs to start earlier, a couple weeks earlier, and we need to be done by January 1st. For no other reason, let's not get involved in messing around with the NFL when the playoffs start and they start to get really good. It was interesting because last year, nobody's more into college football than we are right here. And I have interest in the NFL because of kids we've coached and friends in the NFL, but I'm not nearly as passionate about the NFL as I am as college football. But I found myself like losing a little bit of interest in January as these college football playoffs drag on and the NFL playoffs kind of got more exciting. And I'm thinking, if this is happening to me, this is a really bad thing for college football. Like, why the games it's taking too long. Let's get this thing done. Let's tighten this up. Let's start it here. Let's be done January 1st. It seems like that's a real consensus that people want. Now, again, there's, you start looking at these things and there's like, okay, what's the big problem with that? Well, maybe it's the TV contracts. They don't want to start that early. I don't know. Another thing that would be a thing, if you're starting the games, in mid-August, well, here's a interesting, just like little thing. The weather. Not for us. It's perfect in Seattle, but you go into the South or some of these places where like in mid-August playing these games, like how do you, you're going to have to play like night games. And so there's always like these little bumps in the road, but I don't know. I would like to see the calendar be adjusted where it's over January 1st. I think then that, the main thing though, the recruiting calendar needs to tie into that. I mean, it's like, okay, start the season earlier, finish the season, and then let's sign high school kids / JC kids. I would say it's like the portal kids first, then the high school JC kids. Like right now, how it's going on. So they're kind of trying to do that, right? Like, so no, they opened it like January 2nd to, I guess it's going to end Friday, the portal. All these kids jump in you can't prepare for that. Like, how do kids know what it's like to come to Washington or South Carolina or wherever they're going to transfer for? And how do these coaches really know what these kids are all about? F1 Zoom call. They can barely have a chance to get them on campus. It is nuts. And every coach, it's bad. Like when every administrator and every coach that just shakes their head and just says, this is like ridiculous what's going on here in all aspects of the kid. And so it's just, it's the accumulation of many, many years of being out of touch, outdated, and antiquated, the system that was being used. And then it blows up. And it's just a free for all.
Yeah.
And then how do you get back to like making sense of this?
Yeah. There used to be kind of thought experiments that people would do in the NFL or Major League Baseball. What if everybody's on 1-year contracts and you just shake it up like an Etch-a-Sketch after every year? It's kind of what's happened to a certain extent in college football. And with the Damon Williams situation, with him kind of agreeing to come back, announcing he's coming back, and then changing his mind, and then changing his mind again. From the outside, what was your perspective on something like that?
I mean, it's kind of interesting that situation happened right here in our backyard, right? That became the epic, the focal point of college football. And it's like, and again, this is not Damon's fault. and this isn't the university, it's the system. Like, someone's going to go pay whatever, $1 million more to a kid on like he can like, and there's no real rules or what's right and what's wrong in terms of legal. Of course, something like this is going to happen. It's just a matter of time, and there's going to be something more ridiculous than that down the road if we don't fix it. So that's what I thought. But I also thought about this. It was very interesting to me when everybody swelled up on this, when UW swelled up on this, when the Big Ten swelled up on this and said, no, this is not right. This is not going to happen. How it didn't happen. And so I'm like, yeah, like college, the college power brokers that be like, yeah, I know there's so many lawsuits lurking around that we can't do this, we can't do that, but we can do something. But the problem is, it's just so much self-interest out there, right? So the commissioners of the big two leagues, are the most powerful people in this whole thing, are really dictating how it goes. But again, their job's not to negotiate and oversee for the greater good of college football. Like they kind of are, but not really. They're trying to take care of their people in their leagues. I mean, that's what they're hired there for. So how are we going to make this thing better, this college? And it's really hard because the whole thing is really, like you're saying, like shaken up in a bag, tossed up, and like, wait, how do we go from here? I mean, it's pretty apparent to me that it's got to be some version of the NFL model. And nobody said, we don't want to be NFL like. Well, it's what it's going to be. And it's not going to be exactly that, but, they've figured a lot of things out over the years. And so why wouldn't we figure out and accept the change that is coming and use some of the, and so to me, it's like collective bargaining with the players is coming. I don't know how you're getting around that. If you're trying to get something that we're all on the same page and we're all agreeing to these, these new rules and regulations. I mean, that's what just hits my brain, but.
I'm sure, in your career, you probably had a conversation or two with a guy who wanted to transfer or was unhappy with his playing time and maybe his teammates knew it and you talked him out of it and he stayed, or you wound up landing a recruit who flipped a time or two or didn't sign on signing day or whatever it might be. How different is it when you're now welcoming the starting quarterback, the face of the program, back into a locker room where not just his teammates, not just the coaching staff, but anybody who cares about college football in the entire country knows that 48 hours prior he was trying to leave and perhaps now is only staying at Washington because, like you said, of the contract he signed. How do you think a head coach goes about sort of navigating what comes next? And does the current state of the game maybe aid in that, because it is such a business now that maybe there isn't such a winning back the locker room component to this?
Yeah. I mean, this is what's so fascinating and so challenging and tricky being a leader in this day and age in college football, because these are really new dynamics that are so tricky to navigate. And I know this, if that locker room is not united and aligned and rowing in the same direction, you got no chance. But what I've kind of found over the years is that, the kids, they're pretty forgiving to each other and they get what's going on. And so can there be some animosity in there? Yeah, but not as much as I think people think. I think it's the older people that have a harder time with this. And so I have no question that Jed and, will do a great job of, this is what I think these kids need is they don't need more information just in general. We're in more information than we can digest, with the way the world has changed with AI and social media and all those things. But what they need a lot of help with is interpreting what in the heck is going on here. They need voices of reason and wisdom. And so, that's the challenge of the leaders that are running these programs, is to get that locker room united. But this isn't like a new thing in the last year or two, or what just happened at Washington. This money thing has been very tricky in locker rooms. It started out with like coaches saying, okay, we're going to sign in this, but you have to be sworn to secrecy. We cannot let this out in the locker room because you're going to be. I mean, there's no secrets in this. Like, I'm like, oh, really? That's going to work? Like, these kids, that is not going to hold up. And so coaches, I think, found that out very quickly. Like, there's no secrets in that locker room at all. And so so we got to be transparent about this. And so how do you navigate that? And it's similar conversations that I used to have with our staff on money. I mean, it's exactly like you got to talk about the elephant in the room. I would tell this coach, I'm like, guys, this thing makes no sense to me. The fact that the head coach would make whatever times as much as people in this room, like, that doesn't make sense to me. I don't work harder, or I'm not smarter than you guys are. It's just the nature of the industry on roles that we have here. So then it comes to the coordinators. And I think about an assistant or an analyst or whatever that's even spending more hours in the office than some of us are. And he's paying very little. It's just how the industry is set up. And the quarterback's going to make the most money. And then the edge rusher is going to make the next most. And then the left tackle. And so you got to have these hard conversations. And, it's like, that doesn't mean like you're less important to our success and what we need to do. It's just the role that you have now. I mean, we've had those conversations about roles when nobody was being paid, but now it makes them trickier because people, think about like how I'm being paid and those type of things is my value to the crew. And, hard conversations, hard things to navigate, hard things to make sense. And it's like a full-time job to make sure like we all understand this thing. I think people, players, whatever, in any organizations, teams, they always want to feel like they really belong here. Like, these are my people. So, that kind of goes through building trust. We could, talk about this stuff forever, but that's number one. Number two, that regardless of their role, that they are very important to what's going on here. And number three, I think all people want to get better and grow. And I think if you can just keep that in mind as a leader of somebody that's like with everybody in your organization, do they really feel like they're accepted and they belong here? Do they really feel and like important to the cause of where we're going? And are we giving them an opportunity to get better and learn and grow and then eventually change their role down the road? I think those things can, be a starting point for this whole thing.
You still got it, Coach. I'm kind of fired up. I'm ready to go through a wall right now.
No, I still don't got it because I'm sitting here talking to you guys.
From your perspective and watching games now and kind of being still sort of intimately involved, but having a distance, has the game been impacted at all? Like, do you see differences on the field, or is this just the stuff that's happening kind of outside and during the recruiting seasons and during the transfer portal? Do you see any impact on the quality of the game?
What's crazy about this is I think the game on Saturday has never been better. Mm-hmm. It is awesome. And, it's like, and everybody's kind of disgruntled behind the scenes. The fans, I've had conversations with, our Fox people down there because, they just do their thing. And, it's awesome because they are really trying to promote the game, the athletes, the coaches. That's what they want to do. They want to celebrate the game. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I know, but you guys don't know what's going on behind the scenes, starting with the fans. It feels like it is a house of cards. They are having such a hard time. Like, wait, we're paying players now? And I get that. Like, so, no, it's that thing about change, right? It's like, there's that cartoon out there where it's, okay, who thinks we need to change around here? And everybody raises their hand. And then the next question is, okay, who wants to change themselves around here? And everybody's staring back at the leader like, no, I'm not changing. Everybody else needs to change. So it's kind of that thing. So when it affects us, so like everybody had a hard time, fans starting with, and we get it. And coaches, number two, like, wait, we're paying these guys. So that ship has sailed. And I think even a lot of fans are like, okay, I get this. But when you couple that with the transfer portal, like people are going to give their money to support these kids, and they're going to be, 6-month hired guns and on to the next thing. That's hard to stomach for everybody involved. And it's not the kid's fault. It's the way the whole thing is set up. So, yeah, but I think the game and the ratings, it's kind of weird. It's a paradox, right? Because everybody's like, oh, this thing's going to start heading south fast. And it's not. It's more popular than ever. But I still feel like it's a house of cards in many ways. It's just like, I know what's going on behind the scenes with, the agents that are, influencing like these kids and these families for a lot of bad decisions. And some of them are good. We hear about the good, the small percentage of like, wow, this is game-changing money for these kids and their family. And then the majority of it is not. It's like, and I'm not trying to be flippant here, but like, some of this is Happy Meal money. Like, what are we talking about? This isn't going to change your life. What's going to change your life is leaving this place. And Danny, you were asking this about earlier. It's like, I think about my time when I first became the head coach at Boise, and how probably the entire team would have left right away. Like how hard it was and how hard we practiced, and the things and the patience that some of these kids, that a couple of them ended up being first-round draft picks, and we redshirted them, and then they were our backup for a year and a half. And then for 3 years, maybe 2.5 years, they really started to excel. And I just remember, like I remember this one, we had a linebacker his name was Corey Hall, and he redshirted his first year. And he was from a small high school in Idaho. And I was the offensive coordinator at the time and actually recruited him to come to Boise. And he was a great kid and a really good player. And redshirt his first year, and then a 4-year starter at linebacker. And that didn't happen much back in those days to be a 4-year starter. And at the end of his career, he's like an all-league player all the time. I think the Packers drafted him, might have signed him as a free agent, flipped him to fullback. And he played a couple of years as a fullback for the Packers. But I remember talking to him late in his career, and this kid was a tough kid too. And I'm like, what'd you think? And he's like, oh my gosh, this was hard. Like, whew, I don't know, and I'm thinking this kid's career couldn't have gone any better for like, if you projected out how it would go. And I think about, here's a guy's career that went so awesome. The playing time plan was really scripted, and he usually doesn't go as planned. Mm-hmm. And then goes to the NFL and plays a little bit. And he's talking about how hard this thing was. And so it usually doesn't go that well. And we would tell our guys, even when we recruit them, it's like, listen, this is not, I'm going to tell you, I tell them in recruiting, it is not going to go as you think it's going to go. Just get ready for that right now. Now, that doesn't mean this can't be one of the most game-changing experiences in a positive way that you've ever been through. But this is going to be so hard, and there's going to be some twists and turns that are not expected, and you just got to hang in there and keep fighting. Well, the way the system's set up now, that is like, we're not wired to hang in there and fight like that. Mm-hmm. But as we all know, like the best things in life that we're most proud of are always on the other side of hard. When we persevere and power through them and get through them, we're usually pretty proud of how things went, even if they weren't like as scripted and turned out exactly how we wanted. Fast forward to my time at Washington, the whole team did want to transfer when I showed up there, but they couldn't for the most part. They could, but they'd have to sit. And it was like, that was a really hard time looking back on it, because they were really bought into the old staff's way. And so here we're coming talking, it's like, this isn't what I signed up for. So I had a lot of compassion for those guys. And so in some ways it's like, yeah, maybe they should be able to go. So because it was just kind of a lot of friction for a year or two, and then finally you recruit guys, or they kind of feel your way because there's different ways to skin the cat. So, anyways, like, yeah, it's complicated.
This is what college football has done to my brain, is that you talk about when you first took over at Boise State, they're like, oh, if it were today, everybody probably would have left. No, if it were today, you could have leveraged the hell out of them, because the whole fan base would have been saying, we got to promote the coordinator. We got to promote Chris Petersen. That's how we're going to keep the roster together. These guys are all going to want to stay and play for the internal hire. So, because that's, there was some thought about that, I think, with Ryan Grubb. When Kalen left, like, shouldn't we try to go from, within here to try to keep the roster together and those sort of things. So that's what this sport has done to my thinking when it comes to coach carousel stuff. I think we knew when Washington left for the Big Ten that it was not going to be as simple as, okay, you're playing against Arizona State, Arizona, still USC, but Cal, Stanford, all these schools. Now you're just playing in another league. You're just going to pick up and go play over there. There's a transition needed. They're going to have to recruit differently. I remember you saying shortly after that decision was made that, like, hey, if you're a UW fan and you wanted this, and this is where you think UW should be, like, you're going to have to be involved in this too. It's going to take a different level of support. You're going to go to these Big Ten stadiums and you're going to see, like, it's different in that part of the country. It just is. I'm curious what your perspective is on how the school has made that transition. Do you see a different caliber of support? Does it feel differently to you now that they are in the Big Ten?
I think UW's doing a nice job. I really do. I've been really impressed and pleased with the fan base and their support of this whole thing, even though there's been a lot of frustration. Like, this is what college football is. I really have. I thought, I'm like, oh no, this stadium's going to be not quite as full. Like, there's a lot of people, and there have been some people say, I'm done with that. But, like, for the most part, I think the fans have hung in there pretty good as we continue to adjust through this new normal. I also think that, like, the administration over there, like Pat Chung, I mean, I think he's really, really good. I mean, he gets it. I like his thinking. He gets coaches, but he doesn't even think like he's a coach, or, that the X's and O's of things. And, like, he is very, very good. And is working his tail off to try to help the system. He wants to do right for the greater good of college football, but he also has to do what's right for the University of Washington. So I think it's been probably really cool for the fans to go to Penn State and see what that looks like, and go to, I guess we haven't been to Ohio State, been to Michigan, and see what that looks like. And it is a different level. And then you even go to the SEC, and their slogan, that it just means more. I chuckle at that because that's the wrong slogan. To me, in the SEC, it just means too much. Those people are crazy. Like, I mean, they want to run Kalen DeBoer out of it. I mean, that's what I was so worried about that thing, because I know Kalen. I know what kind of coach he is. And more importantly, I know what type of human being he is. And he is as good as they come. But when you're following a guy that won as many national championships, and then the rules change and flip everything on its head, so it's not the same game that they were playing, that's like a no-win situation. They don't care about that. And the style that they want of the coach, it's this hard-nosed, like, that's not what coaching. I'm just like, no, this thing just means too much to these people. Like, we need to pull back. But it's also the beauty of college football, because there's so much passion there.
Do you do much with Jed Fish and his staff or the program still?
No. I stay away pretty good there. I talk to Jed, but he has his way, and we have conversations, and I'm always. One of the reasons I enjoy working with some coaches, like, I got a handful I work closely with, but because I still learn a lot. Like, like, this is really intriguing to me. Like, I don't have all the answers, as we're talking about right here. I've been through some things, and I always feel like I've been through the school of hard knocks. But this new paradigm that is going on in college football that's been completely upended, like I love talking to these coaches and seeing some of the dynamics that they're working through and how I would think about that and how I could help that. So I've had conversations with Jed, but for the most part, you know, we're not connected on a weekly or biweekly basis.
Were you fired up to see Garen Hatchett get a 7th year? You still got a guy who signed with you in the program.
Yes, I am. When kids get a chance to play college football, like, most of these guys that we're talking about, like, this is like, most of these guys aren't going to the NFL. Whether Garen is or Garen isn't, but like really this is the meat. So the more you can play this thing, and I love that family and his brother, Landon, and that whole thing. And so that's fun to see. But I will say, I think this is another crazy thing. 7 years. What are we talking about? I'm glad he got it because that's just how the rules. But like, why we don't have 5 years of eligibility and stop talking about redshirting or not redshirting. Stop talking about medical redshirting, because everybody knows behind the scenes, half the coaches in America were cheating that rule anyways. They were going to redshirt. If a guy redshirted or whatever, like they were going to make sure there was an injury early on in the kid's career. So you could use that. That's how you get that year back as medical. You have to be hurt, twice. So it was just a sham anyways. And so anytime you give a coach an angle to work this, I mean, half these guys are going to take. And so then the NCAA is put in an awkward spot, like having to say, well, let me look at the medical stuff here. And then the trainers, it makes no sense. So now, I don't know if you guys heard, now they're talking about the college coaches are supporting 9 games.
9 games.
You can play 9 games and still redshirt. So there's obviously some reason behind this, that they're not just flipping this thing and saying, no, it's 5 years. Like, we don't need to talk. When did he enroll? And there's nothing to even just talk about and decide. And it's amazing to me because Gene Blameyer, the AD that was at Boise when hired me, had been there 25 years. He was talking about this way back in the day. Why are we not going to 25? But I think there were some Title IX issues that had to do with money. But, again, this whole thing, Todd, I mean, that's a whole nother issue, right? Like that whole thing. And, yeah, I don't even know if we want to go there, but so it's just 9 games. We're like, really? I mean, why are we not just saying 5 years and move on? But there's a reason. I don't know it.
I got 2 quick ones for you, and we'll let you get out of here. I will assume if you wanted to still be coaching, you would be coaching. So I asked this not for you, but generally speaking, was there an opening this last cycle with so many of these Power 4 jobs and other jobs coming open where you thought, that's a very interesting job. That's a very interesting opening. There's a lot of potential there, either with regard to the opening itself or the coach that school ultimately hired.
Are you asking, did I think about going to one of those schools?
If you did, I'd love to know, but not necessarily. No.
Sometimes, there might be a school that I still think about fit for everything. For kids going to certain schools, coaches going to certain schools, head coaches taking jobs, what that university is all about. And so there may have been a job or two that I would say, oh, I know I'd fit there. Was I thinking about, oh, maybe? No, not at all. Like, and in life, when there's an opportunity, you start to get that feeling in your stomach, like, oh boy, like it's almost a nervousness and maybe some fear in there that you're like, oh boy. And then on the other thing, things come along your path that are presented to you, and it's just like flatlined. There's just and a lot of no juice, so to speak. That's how I've been with these coaching jobs. Like in my heart, it's like, no. Because, and I will say this, I think coaching's still such a just a cool profession that even though the rules and how it's going right now is very hard to do what most coaches want to be, is this transformational leader that really helps young people like grow through this platform of this ultimate team game of college football and college athletics in general. But the reason that I don't want to jump onto a sidelines, I just don't want to live my life that narrow anymore. And in college football, there's no way around that this is not a 365 job. It just is, with the recruiting thing and the way it goes. Like it is 365. And where I am in my life, I think it's super important. College athletics, I still believe that to my core. But for me to be involved with a locker room and a team and a staff, it's just like, I know what that takes. And I don't want to, at this point in my life, live it that narrow, so to speak.
Do schools still reach out, or do they all know that by now?
Very much fewer and far between. I think the word, is kind of out there. It's like, yeah, I don't think this is happening for him. So
the last one I wanted to throw your way, and it doesn't have to just be one guy. If a few come to mind, that's okay. And we won't hold you to like omitting anybody.
Oh, gosh, I don't like these questions already, Christian.
I know it would. Hey, it wouldn't be a real interview if I didn't ask you something you didn't like. Most underappreciated Washington Husky player from your time coaching.
Oh, my stars. See, I need these questions in advance to really give a great answer to that.
I know.
Because I would say something and then I'd think of another guy, and that's, I don't know. Like I think of these like core type players, that were not the Buda Bakers and Shaq Thompson and these big name superstar, or the quarterback, Jake Browning, those type of things. It's guys that, they would know, but it's more like the Will Dissly type guys and Greg Gaines that, they're NFL players. And so maybe that's not even fair. I need to kind of go back and others that were like, we won because of like these like guys that embrace their roles and, all those type of things. Gosh darn, I know there's going to be just so many, I just think we had like, that was the beauty, is like we had some superstar talent guys, but we also had a lot of really good college football players that bought into it. So that is a super, I should have known you were going to come up with some of these hard questions like that, Christian.
I just thought of it.
I'm going to give you my favorite Husky.
Yeah.
From your time.
Yeah. Let me hear it.
And this is hard because Ben Burke-Irvin is really high up there. Like
yes,
Ben Burke-Irvin was one of my favorite Huskies ever to cheer for. But if I was going to give my answer for the most underappreciated Husky of your tenure, it's a guy, he's still playing in the NFL. I don't believe he was drafted. Miles Bryant was such a freaking stud.
And so Miles Bryant jumped into my head. He walked on,
Mm-hmm.
but like he played so much for us, and then he goes into the NFL and still playing.
Yeah, he's still
I'm trying
in the
to
league.
think, and there's other guys that didn't go into the NFL that had so much to do with us winning some championships and a lot of games.
That's true too.
You're exactly right. Ben Burke-Irvin, but Ben Burke-Irvin went with the Seahawks,
fifth round pick.
Would probably still be playing if he didn't get hurt.
Yep. Yeah.
So that's why this is such a unfair question.
It is
Christian.
an unfair question, Christian.
Not down with that, because
I said I would.
A couple guys, and there's gonna be other guys that might say, "Hey, Coach Pete he didn't mention you that you were a key," and it's like, oh, geez.
Yeah, they're all watching this. They're eagerly awaiting each episode. I asked partially because I did a story with Jake Browning a few years back after he was in the NFL about just talking about guys he'd thrown touchdown passes to. and we got to Darrell Daniels, and he mentioned he's like, people have no idea how important Darrell Daniels was as he played his role on the field. Obviously, he was a starter. He played, and I believe he played in the NFL too. I forget if he's still on a roster or not, but he's like, if people knew behind the scenes, like as far as uniting the team and being a leader and bringing everybody together, he's like, Darrell Daniels was as important as anybody.
And so the other guy that I'd throw right alongside that was his running mate, Keyshawn Bierria.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
I mean, there's but Darrell, no, maybe more Keyshawn than even, because Darrell I was trying to answer your question, not think of these NFL guys.
Right.
Fringe NFL guys that maybe got signed and didn't really those are the guys that are the really unsung heroes. So a Keyshawn Bierria, oh yeah, completely. And again, Jake Browning talking about Darrell as well, because those guys were recruited by, Sark's staff and were indoctrinated into that way. And then here we come with a completely different way. That is a hard transition. And that was, not only different schemes, but different mentality of culture and all these things. And for those guys to eventually be big voices in the locker room to say, this is how we're doing it, guys, let's go. Those guys were game changers for us.
All right. Well, we'll end on that. We'll let you get going. Chris, really appreciate your time. It's a great conversation. Always appreciate the insight. Hope you're doing well. Are you, can we expect to see you on our TV screens again next year?
I think so, but you know how things, go in this crazy world of sports and all that. I'm planning on being back there, but I hope so.
Right on. Well, we appreciate it. Take care.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Coach.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thanks again to Chris Petersen for joining the show. A lot of stuff in there, a lot of good stuff. What do you take away?
Well, I do want to say he's a pretty inspiring dude. And just from my perspective, hearing him talk about, I'm really grateful he was a coach at Washington. I feel really lucky to have cheered for those teams or had the opportunity to have a coach. He was a great Husky coach. And I think that you hear in his voice, first, I really admire the fact that he's kind of pivoted and decided that not that he disliked what he was doing, but that I kind of want something different, than he's pivoted, and that coaching isn't going to, it doesn't sound like that's something that's going to be in his future again. And I think that's really difficult and admirable to do, because you think about the very elite company he's in as a college football coach, to try and find a different way to have more independence and find purpose still. I thought that part was really cool. And then I think you hear in his voice a lot of the struggle that the entire sport is going through right now, of it's something people love, things have changed, and it's hard to make sense of exactly where this is going or when we're going to get there.
Should we assume that LSU is not one of the schools that reached out?
I'm going to probably say in culture fit, that's probably not the place. That's probably not the sort of place where it would work.
I don't want to misinterpret he did not actually say that any schools reached out this cycle. We were speaking generally broadly that fewer and further between number of schools reach out in general when there are coach open. I don't want to imply something that he didn't say. So just to make very clear, but yeah, I don't know that the SEC will necessarily be taking on his marketing advice, but that was very funny.
It was. I thought of my first job out of college was at ESPN, and one of the things I would do is ghostwrite things. I would call and interview ESPN personalities and then turn sort of that into columns, like things they said, but write it in a column. Bill Curry was one of them. He's the former Alabama coach, and he also coached at Kentucky. But he made the comment that he goes, my wife said, gosh, it's like a religion down here. And the person who responded to him, oh, honey, it's much more important than that about SEC football. That was the thing I thought there. The other thing, when he mentioned sort of that idea of when he looks at jobs that come open, does he ever think like, oh, that's a culture fit? There was a time John Madden, and it was when he was at Fox, was talking about he was working with Jimmy Johnson, and Jimmy had decided to go back and coach at what turned out to be the Miami Dolphins. And John Madden was saying, as that night, when it was clear Jimmy was going to take the job and he's starting to think about how he's going to build it, John Madden said, I had this flash of like, oh, that'd be kind of fun. He goes, and I turned to my wife and told her, this is how I feel, and I really hope this feeling goes away tomorrow because I don't want to coach again. And he said when he woke up the next morning, he didn't feel that anymore. And when I listened to Chris saying and talking about sort of these coaching jobs, I was like, he hasn't even gotten that blip of like, ooh, that might be kind of fun to do. Like that hasn't happened yet. Oh, and it might never happen for him in terms of actually being tempted to think about coaching again.
He really captured that feeling, because I never thought about it quite like that, but he's totally right. That feeling when you're doing one job, maybe you're happy in your current job, maybe you don't love it quite so much, but another job comes open or expresses interest or whatever, whatever, an opportunity becomes available in one form or fashion. And it's not just like, ooh, I want that, because no job is perfect, right?
Right.
It's like, man, I know that I have to put everything I have into getting that job.
Yep.
And I will kick myself if I don't, but I also don't know if I really want it. But I also have anxiety about like, what if I don't give it my all to get it, because I feel like I probably need to go do it.
Yep.
Almost like I have to try to get this job. Then like, oh, that would be a really great job to have, and I really, really, really want it.
There's also the feeling of, I don't want to be too bummed if I don't get it. Like, right? It's like, yeah, man, that's the thing. That's the thing I'm going to shoot for. Like, there's a gut level reaction that you have to things like that.
I wonder if he thought about Stanford even a little bit, even a little tiny little bit.
Oh, that's interesting. See, because the first job that came to my mind was Penn State. Yeah,
I can't see him moving to State College.
Yeah, that's probably true too, though. Having been to State College, I could. Chris Petersen would wear very well in that part of the country with that fan base.
I really can't. I mean, the headline is, I really can't see him taking any of those jobs, which makes sense because he clearly was not interested in any of them. And I have no clue if Stanford would have wanted to go that route, but it is I think he crystallizes this feeling of there is so much wrong with the sport, but Saturdays are still awesome.
Yeah. And it also, I was kind of thinking, I was like, okay, maybe we've kind of made it through the crazy wonky part of this offseason, and you can start taking stock of what Washington lost, what Washington gained, and feel, yeah, it was really, really crazy and stressful for a period of 48 hours, but things have settled down and maybe all will be right with the world again come September.
Maybe. I talked to people about this very thing where I'm like, man, it's the machinery around it. It like wears you down Monday through Friday during the season, but like Saturdays are still awesome. And I think people who work in the business, some feel that. Some are like, I love the job Monday through Friday, even with all the challenges. I love, working in service of helping young people grow and get better at all that they do as people and athletes and all these things. I hate Saturdays because the wrong result on Saturday can take all the focus off of all of the other good parts of the job, and it's the only thing that people see, right? And if you get the right result on Saturday, people are thrilled with everything that's going on in the athletics building, but also for the wrong reason, right? They still have no clue like what the administrative staff and all, everybody who works in any college athletic department are doing Monday through Friday. So it's interesting, different viewpoints on that all important day of the week. One question we didn't get to that I always am fascinated by when coaches go into studio work and analysis, less so color commentary, because I think there's a little bit more room for this in color commentary. But, if you're a coach, better than anybody how much study and detail and care and thought and nuance is involved in any given play call, the structure of the offense, the reason you know better than anyone, the reason why certain plays work or don't, why certain teams win or lose, what's working and what's not. And now you have to get on camera and in 10 seconds discuss what you just watched. And there's simply no way you can include all that nuance and include all that. Like, you probably got a zillion thoughts about why this worked or didn't. And I wonder if coaches feel at all like they're, this is putting it in way too dramatic terms, but like betraying their profession a little bit by boiling it down into a soundbite when they know, like, yeah, but we need an hour to break down what all went into this call.
Yeah. Dave Wyman used to refer to it as, he goes, I refuse to undergo the player lobotomy. And what he meant by it was that he was not going to sort of take the easy path of criticizing someone or calling a player dumb when he knew sort of what went into that. Like, he wasn't going to lose touch with that. And I think that is a challenge, because television in general, modern media specifically, they want that quick, decisive, sort of declarative thing. And it's very seldom as simple as people boil it down to, of this was right, this was wrong. It's usually an outcome is the result of a number of different interrelated factors, all of which on their own are kind of explicable. It's kind of like when he was talking about stupid rules, like, why isn't it 5 years to play? Like, why can't you just, he's like, there's got to be a reason for it. Like, I'm smart enough to know that they didn't just do this because there's a reason that it's there. It's not a good enough reason to keep it there. So, like, trying to remain a normal and balanced person while working in the media in the current environment is a challenge.
We know the reason now. So he's been banging this 5-for-5 drum for years. I think we probably mentioned this on this show, even when he was coaching at Washington. He's like, why are we even messing around with the red shirt thing? Just give them 5 years. Why make us like be accountants for every guy on our roster for 1 year? Like, why are we doing this? The reason that they can't go full bore now is because they're getting sued over it by so many different people that it would just cause this avalanche, right? If they pulled it now and they'd have to, it would wipe out not a whole, but like a big chunk of an incoming high school class. You'd have now all these guys trying to play next year when coaches have already like put together their rosters, planning for them to be moving on because they're seniors. And so they can't jump straight to it. But 9 game limit for redshirting is utterly hilarious, like utterly hilarious. And if that rule, by the way, it's not a rule yet. We should make clear, like, it's been recommended to the council and they'll have to approve it. But if that rule had been in place this year, Jacob Manu could have claimed his junior year at Arizona as a redshirt year because he played in 9 games. I think he'd played 9 total, if I remember right, or maybe it was fewer. Even though it would have been fewer, he could have just taken that as his redshirt year, played this year. Even if he'd played this year, he would have been limited to 9, and this could have been his redshirt year. So they wouldn't have had to worry about sitting him in any games at all this year. Once he was healthy, he could have been full go, and so it's coming a year late for him. You probably wouldn't say that his absence cost them any victories this season, based on the games he played in or didn't play in. He didn't play against Oregon, but they didn't lose that game because they were weak up the middle and couldn't stop the run. Right? I think they played pretty solid. So one more fun, another data point in support, if you're Jed Fish, of conducting your program as if redshirting doesn't exist, because there's no reason to think that by the time that bill comes due in the current class's 5th college season that it is going to be a thing. And I don't think any head coach is necessarily like coaching with the thought that, okay, when I'm still the head coach at this school 4 years from now, because who the hell knows what's going to happen 4 years from now. Jed Fish is scheduled to meet with the media. We're recording this as we speak right this second. It's 10:42 a.m. on Wednesday, January 14th. Jedd Fisch is scheduled to meet with reporters this afternoon at 1 o'clock. I will be there. But if you see any news come out of that, which no announcement or anything is expected, it's an opportunity to ask about transfers they've added and obviously ask, I imagine, a question or two about Damon Williams Jr. Anything noteworthy that comes out of that you might see. If there's a reason it didn't make it into the show. It's because it hasn't happened yet. But I will be there. I'll be writing about it on Montlake.com. And you'll probably get some insight from Jedd Fisch on the transfers they've added so far.
Got a lot of defensive linemen. They bulked up front.
Other than the punter, and there's some disappointment too. I think they targeted a couple of receivers. Obviously, wanted to bring in someone who could be that sort of bigger body target with Denzel Boston moving on. They have not landed any of them. So, it has not been they're not batting 1,000, so to speak, which nobody ever does. But other than the punter, is there anybody they've added who you're particularly excited about?
Yeah, I'm excited about the Ball State defensive lineman that you talked to.
Very impressive guy. Impressive guy.
Yeah, and when I talked about his gardening, I immediately thought of Leonard Williams of the Seahawks, who's made quite a bit of really nice houseplant content on TikTok. I don't know if you're aware of that. Yeah. He shows us the plants that he maintains and takes care of. He refers to them as little people, like that he cares for. She, I believe, is like, here's what she needs. Yeah,
that's a real gardener right there.
I'm excited about. I'm just excited about the defensive linemen that they've added. I think that you see that they have taken some really strong steps, and I really appreciated the play and felt bad about the injuries that the Parkers have suffered. But I also honestly felt seeing them enter the transfer portal, I think, speaks to what could be some pretty significant upgrades up front.
So, best of luck certainly to the Parker twins. Both, I remember talking to them not long after they committed, and it was kind of this out of nowhere, like, whoa, these twin defensive linemen from the Detroit area, like, who are they? And super interesting, nice dudes. I think the kind of player that fans really enjoy rooting for. I think both could be really good college football players, could be really good defensive linemen, but just the injury thing.
The injury was brutal. And they got to be on the field together, which I thought was really cool last season. Like, that happened. I thought that was very cool. But if you're looking at this from a team building, what's that defense going to look like? I think the moves that have happened in this transfer portal period are significant upgrades for Washington.
So there's a report from Alan True, who covers Midwest football recruiting for 24/7 Sports, that both Parker brothers have visits scheduled to Wisconsin, Illinois, Auburn, and Arkansas. And that just goes to show, like, how valuable any amount of D-line experience and how valuable that body type is in college football. Not a knock on their ability at all. Again, I think when both are healthy, both obviously can help a Big Ten team. Javon Parker was really, he looked like their best run defender in that game that we both were at Rutgers. In 2024. Literally playing clearly the best football of his career right before he tears his Achilles. Extremely unfortunate. Armon Parker has battled, and they had another ACL tear this year, so I don't know what his availability is going to be for next season, wherever he ends up, but he had made it into the rotation. He was playing regularly. He was the guy who, when he signed, Kalen DeBoer's coaching staff, not so quietly, were like, this dude could be legit. Like, we really think he could be a high-level D tackle going forward. So ability there, but, again, like, two guys who combined really have not gotten to play a ton of college football through no fault of their own, yet there's significant, apparently interest from two Big Ten programs and two SEC programs. Everybody needs D-line help.
It is a truism across all of sports. You can never be too big or too strong up front.
I think we've held you long enough. we'll let that interview with Chris Petersen carry the episode today. You can read about whatever Jed Fish says this afternoon at onmontlake.com. Good seeing you, Danny.
It was great to talk to you. Thanks for setting that interview up with Coach Pete. That was pretty awesome.
You bet. We'll talk to you guys next week.